What is this?
I would have forgotten about it. Go ahead. All right, I need you to read that.
What is
What's this?
Read this. Okay.
Just read it, like off the paper?
Miserable carping.
Miserable carping.
Carping. Retro.
Oh, what's the second word? Retromingent?
Retromingent.
Retromignant.
Retromingent vigilante.
Retromingent vigilante.
Miserable carping retromingent vigilante.
No, what does that mean?
What is this for?
Is this all being filmed?
A rather astounding letter we received from Ben Bradley.
It was a post reporter, right?
Ben Bradley was an editor of the Washington Post and the target of many of Reed's criticism. They often got the Washington Post to have to correct factual errors.
My father was a nemesis to Ben Bradley. In 1978, Ben Bradley, I guess, had it up to here, with my father.
And finally described him in a letter as
a miserable, carping, retromingent vigilante. No one in the office had any idea what the heck that meant. I think we actually had to go to a veterinary type of dictionary or something, some kind of resource.
And it turns out that rhinoceroses are a retromingent animal.
What we found out was 3 researchers meant to urinate backwards.
And we'll leave it at that.
How much time did he spend trying to find that word?
Reed, of course, was so proud of that. He had that on his wall in his office for many years.
We then reprinted the letter in our newsletter as an example of the kind of success that we were having. It actually turned into a little mini fundraiser through the newsletter. Ben Bradley said he regretted actually sending that letter because he realized that it was actually raising money for accuracy in media, and that's not what he intended it to do at all. We have used that letter over and over again over the last 41 years. We actually created the Miserable Carping Retromingent Vigilante Society. We inducted Ben Bradley in as an honorary member with his induction, his little scroll, his membership scroll.
Ben Bradley didn't like Reed.
That was returned to us in the mail the next day with a little note that he could not receive this high honor.
Well, you're flying over the target when you start taking flack.
When you're telling people they're wrong and they ought to get their act together, that's not a way to make friends, but it is a way to get the job done.
I think the media has always kind of sucked out loud. I mean, for crying out loud, for the most part, have we seen the headlines?
I've been frustrated with the media as long as I've been consuming the media.
Just because they're on television or just because they're in newsprint doesn't mean that they're doing actually a full and fair and balanced reporting of what's out there in the news.
In my hometown of Seattle, we had 4 television stations and a couple of newspapers.
You'd watch the local news at 6 and the national news at 6:30. 3 people who are largely relying on the New York Times or the Washington Post to dictate to us what was happening.
And if you weren't part of those publications, it's like you didn't exist.
And it was often through a different filter than many Americans probably subscribed. Was through a liberal bias.
When I was in middle school, we got a free subscription to the New York Times as a part of some after-school club I was a member of. And I would read it, and I would be incredibly frustrated by the bias on every page.
I mean, I was in college, and I didn't have any training in media, but just reading the newspapers, just consuming, just being a voracious reader of the New York Times, something just disgusted me about it. I saw something wrong about it.
If you want to just drink in what's being fed to you, you'll become a liberal by osmosis because the mainstream media is just overwhelmingly left of center.
I realized at a fairly young age, I was probably 18 or 19 years old, that there was quite a bit of bias surrounding me. Being a journalist is all about telling stories and being as accurate as you can possibly be.
The media in the United States generally came to fruition because political candidates were smack talking each other in these little circulars that were being distributed to the colonists. So I mean, that's really how our press began. It was always nasty. But there was at least a respect for the intelligence and the integrity of the people who were consuming what you were giving them.
The way they treat something that happens under one administration is dramatically different from how they treat a scandal under another administration, and it's morally outrageous.
If you're going into media, your job is to simply distribute the facts like you're handing out paper. You're not supposed to put your spin on it.
Since they live in a bubble, they don't think they're biased because they're reflecting the same values that they hear every day from their colleagues.
If you want to be an editorial writer or if you want to do an editorial program, that's fine. Tell everyone that's what you're doing.
They conclude that anybody that disagrees with them must be a nut or a kook.
They were not interested in fairness. They were not interested in balance. They had a point of view they wanted to get across, and they knew that viewers, Americans, would believe that, and they could shape the narrative into that viewpoint.
We talk about the mainstream media. In the 60s and early 70s, it was the mainstream monopoly.
What we would now call the mainstream media were actively hostile to traditional values.
If you were on the other side, if you had other opinions, or if you had the facts, they were probably going to be discounted because the media had gotten there first with their viewpoint and set the tone.
We began to look at what was going on and demand the kind of fairness that we didn't think we were getting.
Those were the people that AIM was designed to go after from the outset.
And the examples were there every day to be seen.
They woke a sleeping giant.